Hi, everybody. I'm Crystal Haynes. Tonight on Greater Boston, doctors and lawmakers across the U.S. are scrambling to protect patients and hopeful parents after an Alabama Supreme Court upended the practice of IVF. Two experts will join me to break down what happens next. Plus, what GBH News is hearing from public housing tenants in Worcester, where the state is investigating claims of unsafe living and working conditions. And finally,
I'm going back to Boston not as an activist, not to fight in the streets. I wanted to become a reporter.
GBH News' Philip Martin breaks down this journalism and the storytelling behind his award-winning reporting. When Alabama's Supreme Court ruled that frozen embryos used for in-vitro fertilization or IVF are children, that decision sent shockwaves across the country. At least 3 Alabama clinics halted IVF procedures immediately. Patients found themselves in limbo, and lawmakers started scrambling to fight back, including some Republicans. But others, including GOP senators in D.C., are blocking protections for IVF. So how did we get here, and what does this mean for Massachusetts? I'm joined now by Northeastern law professor Katherine Kraschel, who focuses on reproduction, gender, bioethics, and health policy, and Kate Weldon LeBlanc. She is the executive director of fertility and family building nonprofit Resolve New England. Welcome. Thank you so much for joining us.
Thanks for having us.
Thanks for having me.
So first, I want to talk about how we got here legally. And I know that was something of a surprise to the legal community. So Katherine, I'm curious if you could sort of walk us through what happened there.
Sure. So the case that made its way to the Alabama Supreme Court arose out of a few couples whose embryos were destroyed when they were accidentally discarded. And so they sued the hospital where the embryos were stored, as well as the clinic the hospital and clinic where they were stored, under a couple of theories. One is a regular negligence claim, but they also included wrongful death. And so those claims, while dismissed at the lower court, made their way to the Supreme Court to decide whether or not, in fact, families or intended parents whose embryos are destroyed should be allowed to bring a claim for wrongful death, a civil claim, to sue the clinic for monetary damages, to compensate them for the loss of their embryos under a theory that the embryos had died. Specifically, the wrongful death statute generally applies in the state of Alabama to people and children. And so that's how we ended up with a decision from the Alabama Supreme Court holding that embryos ought to be treated just the same as children are treated for the purposes of the wrongful death statute in Alabama.
So many families are in limbo now. Kate, I'm so thoughtful about IVF families. I mean, I've been through 4 IVF cycles myself. I know what that feels like. So there's so many families because Alabama, at least 3 clinics that we know of, perhaps more, just halted production because, or halted their procedures because they weren't sure what was going to happen next.
Absolutely. Well, I always say I'm sorry when we have that in common, but I also feel like our community feels that anyone who is struggling with fertility and family building or has ever struggled with fertility and family building are part of our community. And so the biggest immediate reaction was just sorrow and worry for the patients and their providers in Alabama who are just in complete uncertainty, grief, and worry over what this means. And they literally had their treatment halted in the middle of cycles. And so first of all, this really unprecedented ruling, as always, made our hearts first go to the patients that were impacted. But then you also can't help but worry about the impact on beyond Alabama, and that we don't want this at all to be the trend where our country is moving.
Katherine, was this something that we given the political climate that we're in right now, something that we saw that was possible, was coming down the pipe perhaps because of the overturning of Roe and this concept of personhood that's protected under, legislation and other parts of the law?
Yeah, certainly there have been a lot of concerns with personhood laws and things like abortion restrictions that talk about life beginning at fertilization or life beginning at conception. And the ruling in Dobbs that sort of took away any limiting principle to what states are allowed to do in the name of protecting fetal life or protecting life, protecting embryos and fetuses. Really has emboldened courts and legislatures like the Alabama Supreme Court, which we saw, issue this extreme ruling. I think that before Dobbs, they may have been able to issue the same ruling. They were certainly less restrained in doing so in the wake of Dobbs, for sure.
Yeah, we actually have some sound here from Barbara Calera, the president and CEO of Resolve National, saying that lawmakers will write a roadmap for how our country protects or hinders IVF. Let's take a listen.
I want to let the legislators know that the world is watching. Our country is watching. What happens here today in these offices will be looked at by the rest of the country. This potentially could be a roadmap for other states to restrict access to IVF, or a roadmap on how to protect access to IVF and family building.
That's Barbara Calera there. Kate, I want to think about what families will do in terms of being able to make sure that what their rights to be able to build a family through IVF and in vitro fertilization and all of those things. What is the next move there, and how did your organization perhaps, provide support? Because we know in Massachusetts there are some significant protections here, but that may not be the case across the country.
Right. Well, yes. I mean, that clip was from an advocacy day that was held yesterday at the Alabama State House. And I think one thing that all of us can do is advocate nationally, advocate locally, because even though this decision thankfully does not impact Massachusetts today, there are things that we can do to prevent it ever happening at a broader level that will impact patients here. So we are already looking at, advocacy is already part of our mission, but we're looking at ways we can support bills that we're supporting already, like this incredibly important bill called the Massachusetts Parentage Act. We're looking at ways that can protect children born from assisted reproduction. That's something we can do now. And in terms of the individual patient families, those in Alabama, I know, are working to figure out what their solutions are. And I think in addition to the sorrow and the really devastating nature of the ruling itself, it's also the uncertainty that people aren't even sure if they can move their embryos or what they can do as a next step in their own treatment. And so we are working with all of our partners nationally and locally to really get emotional support and up-to-date information to those people so they know how they can proceed with their own family building. So this has been our real focus, of course, this whole last couple weeks since this ruling has just been how can we help the directly impacted, and also how can we help our community here so that we put protections in place so that this never impacts people that are desperately trying to grow much wanted families in Massachusetts. And also very much we see this in the broader context of reproductive health care, because you can't start parsing these very important issues. They are too fundamentally interconnected. We hear all the time from people who need all sorts of reproductive health care, including abortion, because of fetal anomalies in their pregnancies or other really devastating losses that happen during pregnancy. So we're really advocating for all aspects of reproductive health care, and we'll continue to do so.
Katherine, I'm also thoughtful about insurance companies, which may not necessarily, their headquarters may not sit in the state that their patients or subscribers live in. And then this idea of moving your embryos to a different cryobank. Like, is there even legal precedent or protections around that kind of stuff that sort of creates a guideline for families or folks who may be concerned that, hey, you know, X insurance company that I have is seated in one of these states that are upholding the Alabama decision, but I live over here and it's okay? Could that end up being sort of a mess?
You know, the issue of insurance that I think of when it comes to fertility care is actually coverage, because sadly, you know, when you mention the idea of transferring embryos, I'm not aware of any insurance that covers that cost. So sadly, since there are so many places that insurance is not available and that no state's insurance plan Medicaid insurance plan covers comprehensive fertility care. You know, when I think of insurance and IVF, the thing that, and thinking about patients that I think about most is access. And what I think that, to tag on Kate's point and sort of the questions about this roadmap that Barb talked about in the press conference, that really there are two things that come to mind when we think about you know, first, yes, absolutely, that there are ways that the opinion spells out a way that states could enact, conservative states could enact restrictive laws like what we saw in the context of abortion that restrict fertility care so severely that clinics are left to close and there's gaps in access. But when it comes to thinking about Massachusetts, the Massachusetts Parentage Act is a critical piece of legislation that is just waiting to be passed in Massachusetts. That sadly, yes, Massachusetts has a lot of protections and was proudly one of the first states to recognize same-sex marriage. But yet our parentage laws in Massachusetts have fallen far behind. And other states like Connecticut have passed the Parentage Act, but not Massachusetts yet. And that act protects families that are secures families that are creating and building their families through using assisted reproduction in ways that are desperately important and urgently needed in the state of Massachusetts to make sure that we're protecting children and families that are created through IVF. That is action that people in Massachusetts can take right now to really secure the future of IVF and to secure the families that are being made within the state today.
All right, we love a call to action here. Katherine Kraschel and Kate Weldon LeBlanc, thank you so much for being with us.
Thank you.
Thank you.
We should note that that interview was taped before the news broke this afternoon that the Alabama legislature voted to protect doctors from criminal or civil liability if embryos they help create are subsequently damaged or destroyed. We will continue to follow this story closely. All right, next, asbestos, groundwater, and faulty heating systems. That's what many tenants in Worcester's public housing projects have been living with. Now the city's housing authority is under investigation for unsafe living and working conditions. And it's not just in Worcester. Plenty of tenants across the state are dealing with poor insulation and insufficient heating, leaving them shivering in their own homes this winter. Reporter Sam Turken has been following both of these stories for GBH News, and he joins me now. Welcome to the show.
Thank you for having me.
So, Sam, talk to me a little bit about how you got on this beat. Did tenants reach out to you?
Yeah, it'd been something that I'd been hearing about. Yeah. Late last year, I heard about some brown water at a Worcester public housing complex. People couldn't take showers, couldn't drink the tap water, of course. That was at one housing complex. And then after I produced that story, I heard about issues at other housing complexes as well. So that's where we get into the asbestos and the lack of heat and more brown water at other complexes. And then as I was reporting that other public housing story, I realized that, we realized that heat was a bigger issue than just public housing. You don't have to live in public housing to have issues staying warm. And that's what that second story looked at. You could be a homeowner, right? Live in and own your home, own and live in your home, excuse me.
Right, of course.
And you can't afford to pay for heat. So you keep the thermostat at 60 degrees, 62 degrees, because your oil is costing $3,000 a year. And conserving is the only thing you can do.
Yeah, I'm thoughtful about, is it just sort of this state that we're in now where inflation is so high and everything costs so much money? Or is this something that's sort of been building for a while in terms of economic conditions?
I think it's a combination of factors. One main issue is the state's affordable housing shortage. Because what housing advocates say is with nowhere else to go, when you can't afford to go anywhere else, you have to put up with what you're dealing with. So a lot of these residents are suffering through and settling with poor conditions because they know they can't afford anywhere else. And they're looking. They're spending day and night looking, and they just can't find anything.
Yeah, in fact, we have a soundbite from a tenant complaining about the fear of retaliation if they speak out and showing a letter sort of that's threatening lease enforcement. So let's take a look at that.
Eviction is the word number one in everything. Eviction, 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 eviction. And that's why people don't talk. They're afraid that housing will evict them.
Is this something that you were hearing when you were talking to folks?
Yes. Eviction is the concern on people's minds, regardless of whether it's public housing or market rate housing. To give you an example, for that story focused mainly on heat, I spoke to one resident who was living in her living room, inflating an air mattress in her living room because her bedroom has holes in the walls, so cold air flows through those holes, and her bedroom becomes a freezer at night. So she spent December shivering in bed almost every night going through it, and then she decided, I just can't do this anymore. I'm gonna stay in my living room, which does stay warmer, and she inflates her mattress and lives through that and lives that way. She's complained to her landlord. She even withheld heat at one point. Then she got concerned about them trying to evict, so she kind of gave in a little bit. And since then, they've been telling her they're going to fix the issue, but they haven't. And it kind of illustrates the power that landlords have over renters, as we were saying before. Now, to be clear, not all landlords are like this. In fact, mass landlords, which represents small landlords around the state, they say, look, we got to keep our tenants warm. And the law maintains, the law mandates that landlords have to keep their tenants warm during the winter. It's a handful of landlords that don't necessarily always follow the law.
Well, yeah, well, what recourse do these tenants have? Like, where can they go?
So the state, as I said, the state has this mandates that landlords keep, that their units are able to heat up to about 64 degrees at night and a little bit more during the day. If that doesn't happen, if that's not the case, then tenants can go to the local boards of health and complain. If that doesn't work, the Attorney General's office can step in. In fact, when I reported this story, the Attorney General's office told me, look, if people are having issues with their local boards of health, they should reach out to us and complain. So it's it's very complaint driven. The state just can't go in inspecting every single unit to make sure there's heat. It wouldn't be efficient, take a lot of time and resources. So it relies on the tenants, but at the same time, you have a lot of these tenants who are afraid to complain, right? Because not only some are complaining and nothing's being done about it, but others aren't complaining because they're afraid of eviction, and that's where we go back to the fear of eviction.
Yeah, certainly one to watch here, and it is still cold outside, so something to think about. Sam Turken, thank you so much for your time.
Thank you for having me.
And finally tonight, at the heart of journalism are the subjects of the stories we cover. And GBH's Philip Martin knows that best, thanks to his long career in the field. In fact, he's set to be inducted this spring into the Massachusetts Broadcasters Hall of Fame for his work. Philip shared how he combines journalism and storytelling on GBH's Stories from the Stage. And we bring you his words now as part of a partnership with that show and this one.
Detroit, 1975. I was an anti-racist activist. I'd been all my life. I'd been in junior high school, I'd been in high school, I'd been in this first year of college, Wayne State University. And so when a friend of mine, Richard, came into class and handed me a leaflet, it said, come to Boston for the summer to fight racism. I was ready. I worked at the Detroit Free Press at night on the docks of the Detroit Free Press, bundling newspapers and dropping them off in suburbs and surrounding areas. And before we would take off, I would read the newspaper cover to cover. And quite often I'd be reading about Boston. And what I was reading about Boston was attacks on black children who were in yellow school buses. This was all over the newspapers for days in. So I was fired up. And so come June of 1975, that summer, I had packed up my car. I had this Ford Pinto, packed it up with blue jeans, packed it up with T-shirts, cassette tapes, especially my theme music, Earth, Wind & Fire's That's the Way of the World. That was my song. I couldn't go anywhere without it. And so I drove with two friends from Detroit. We arrived toward Cleveland, continued going to Youngstown, reached Pittsburgh, broke down, fixed the car, made it to the Massachusetts border. And getting to Massachusetts was exotic. I had never been to Massachusetts, and here I reached the Berkshires. It was absolutely beautiful. But then hours later, we hit the Boston border. And my God, gritty, grimy, dirty, and people were incredibly unfriendly. This summer was organized by the Committee Against Racism and included progressives, liberals, people who were even considered themselves conservative anti-racist. And the first day, the very first day, I'm standing at a subway station in Fields Corner, Dorchester, the largest part of Boston. And I hear someone going, the N-word, the N-word. And a year before Robert De Niro said, "Are you talking to me?" in Taxi Driver, I said, "Are you talking to me? I don't see anyone else on this platform. Are you talking to me?" These young men made it clear that they were talking to me. They were calling me the N-word. I grew up fighting. I went to Martin's Recreation Center. That's where I learned to box. Apparently, these kids learned to box too. And so this turned into a real brawl. But when the police arrived, they arrested me. I was the only person arrested. I was freaked out. I thought I was going to be in jail for a long time. But these kids, they pressed no charges, and why should they? They attacked me. But the point of the matter is, I was the only one arrested that day. The summer would be like that day in and day out. Fights and this type of racist contradictions that you would find on the streets. Then I was assigned by the Committee Against Racism to teach at the Free School, Highland Park Free School, teaching kids during the day history and poetry. And the worst and most extraordinary situation that occurred that summer was just leaving the Committee Against Racism office on Huntington Avenue. One day, just within minutes, the office was firebombed. And I thought, wow, that could have been me. That could have been me in that office. And some of my friends who had gotten to know that summer, who had arrived from Seattle and had arrived from St. Louis and other cities, they said, that's enough. That's enough for me, and they left. I decided to hang in there, and a few days later, we hear about an attack on Black Bible salesmen. Black Bible salesmen. These guys were here to literally sell the gospel door to door in Boston. And they decided, because they didn't know any better, that they would go to a beach. But this was Carson Beach in South Boston. A beach where they did not want you there. By they, I meant the residents of South Boston, the majority. And they went to the beach that day and they were beaten to the inches of their lives. These men one ended up in the hospital. And so this unified a lot of people in Boston. There were whites, there were blacks, there were Latinos, Asian Americans who basically came together and decided to march on Carson Beach to guarantee that this beach would be used by everyone and should be used by everyone. We met at a park, Franklin Park in Boston, and a gentleman from the NAACP gave a speech and said, "We are going out here today to Carson Beach and we're going to lay out blankets and picnic baskets and we're going to make sure the beach is for everyone." And so we started marching, about 350 people from the landing area to the beach. And before we even hit the sand, you could hear the sounds. It's sort of a roar of people chanting and screaming. And the chanting was, "Here we go, Southie, here we go. Here we go, Southie, here we go." and it was thunderous. And as we reached the sand, we looked out and we could see about 1,000 people on the other side of this police line. A police line that included cops on the sand, cops in helicopters, cops on the harbor in patrol boats, and on horseback. And no sooner had we gotten to the beach when people started laying out picnic baskets and blankets, then a rock was thrown. It hit a cop on horseback. His horse reared, and suddenly all hell broke loose. The cops start rushing toward the crowd, mainly our side, and the people on the other side of this police line start rushing toward us. I'm looking at a guy straight ahead. He's rushing toward me, and his fists are balled up. We get into a fight. He hits me, I hit him. I'm bloodied, he's bloodied, and this is happening up and down the beach. I turn to my right, and I see a friend of mine, Pam, being attacked. And I grabbed her around the shoulders, and we started rushing off the beach as people are fighting all around us, on the sand, in the water itself, and the helicopters above, this thunderous noise, the sound of the horses running up and down the beach. And I knew that we had to get out of there. And when I said get out of there, I meant at this point I had to get out of Boston. 7 days after that extraordinary moment, I was back on the docks of the Detroit Free Press, bundling newspapers and delivering them late into the night. And before we delivered them, reading the newspapers fresh off the press. And I'm reading about Boston's racial violence and the yellow school buses being attacked that September. The stories themselves were not always complete, and I felt that they lacked complexity based on what I'd seen over the summer. And I decided, to the astonishment and consternation of my family, that I'm going back to Boston. I'm going back to Boston not as an activist, not to fight in the streets. I wanted to become a reporter. So I packed up my Ford Pinto, and I drove back to Boston. And I became a reporter. Over the years, reporting on the complexity and Boston's racial dynamics, and that is what I do today.
Well, that's it for tonight, but come right back here tomorrow for Talking Politics. Katie Lannon will talk with Mass GOP Chair Amy Carnevale about the far-right push of the Republican Party, what the confirmation of Judge Gabrielle Wolohojian shows about the controversial Governor's Council, and how the trailblazers of reparations discussions in Massachusetts paved the way to where we are now. Those stories tomorrow at 7. Thank you so much for watching. I'm Crystal Haynes. Good night.